Welcome to the NASCAR DFS Strategy Show right here on Awesemo.com. Happy Halloween to everyone out there. Hopefully you're having a good day. I don't know if we're going to have many trick-or-treaters no matter where you live. We'll just have to wait and see. I did definitely go out and buy myself some candy just in case, but the rule in my house is you only buy candy that you're going to eat. So looking forward to it. But of course, we're here to break down the Xfinity 500. Phil, happy Halloween, man. How you doing?
Great, man. Believe me, once I get home from church tonight, that porch light will stay off. Nobody's coming around.
Yeah, I definitely don't know, so I just, I went out and bought some candy just in case. And, here at the house, we have what we call the evil corner, which is just a bunch of candy that we have there. But of course, we're here to break this one down for you. Of course, if you do have any questions on the race, hit those up right now, whether it's in our premium channel on Slack, the NASCAR channel here on YouTube, Twitter as well. I will check my Twitter mentions as well throughout the show. So plenty of ways to interact with here on the show. But first off, let's talk about the playoff standings and kind of where we sit heading into this race.
Yeah, well, it took 72 hours, but we finally concluded the race at Texas. And, I mean, if we would have had a few more laps, I truly believe that Martin Truex probably would have passed Kyle Busch. And, I mean, everybody, I got to apologize for that last week. As much as I love a narrative, I completely missed the fact that Kyle Busch had a Skittles paint scheme. If I would have realized that, then I probably would have just been banging the drum for Kyle Busch. And, of course, he goes on and he leads laps and he wins. I mean, it's just something about Kyle and the Skittles rap. He does amazing. But, that's not the point. Truex nearly got there, and if Truex would have won, that would have really flipped the script of where we're looking at in the playoffs, because that would have locked Truex in along with Logano. But where we stand right now, it's Logano's the only guy who's got his spot cemented in. Then it's Kevin Harvick, who's 42 points above the cutoff. Harvick's really not in a lot of danger of losing his spot. Like, he would have to just absolutely wreck out, and then one of like Bowman, Elliott, Truex, or Kurt Busch would have to win. It'd be really weird circumstances, stuff that we're not expecting. And then below Harvick by 15 points is Denny Hamlin, 27 points to the good, and then 2 points below him is Brad Keselowski in that final spot, 25 points to the good. On the flip side of that, you've got Bowman trailing by 25, Chase Elliott trailing by 25, Truex trailing by 36, and then Busch trailing by 81. So just think of it this way. Basically, Bowman, Elliott, Truex, and Kurt Busch, they're all in the spot where they have to win this weekend. Mm-hmm. Truex, we could see that. I could kind of see that same thing from Elliott. Bowman and Busch, it really doesn't seem that likely. Mm-hmm. And something else that we have to watch during the race is if Truex, who starts second, and we're going to talk about his merits later on, and the same thing for Elliott, if one of these guys wins and Hamlin is just like 3 spots behind Keselowski, then despite these 7 wins that Hamlin has had throughout this season and probably being the second best driver, Hamlin's going to miss the championship. So there's a lot of moving scenarios that are definitely going to be going on tomorrow in the race.
Yeah, and of course we'll get into that as as looking at Martin Drex Jr.'s ownership on DK, and obviously people are really liking him on DK. We'll talk about that here, momentarily. But let's talk a little bit about roster construction. First off, let's talk a little bit about roster constructions in terms of GPP.
Okay, we're going from the 327 laps that we saw last weekend at Texas to a 500 lap race. 500 lap race here at Martinsville. So, we are we're adding in almost 200 more laps. Thus, the Dominator points on DraftKings just substantially increase that much more. We're probably looking at in tournaments, the majority of your lineups are going to be 3 Dominator builds. If this thing becomes a wreck fest, then you might even look to 4 Dominator builds. But the problem is on DraftKings and on FanDuel, it's tough. Like, it is tough to get. It's tough to get in 3. And if you're going to get in a 4th Dominator, then you're looking at a cheaper guy in the 8K range that you're predicting to lead laps. If you're playing cash, then you're definitely looking at a 2 dominator build. And then there's some guys that we're going to talk about that definitely help fill in that floor for your cash games. But I'm going to believe the majority of us at this point are just primarily playing tournaments. So in that case, minimum of 2, baseline of 3, and if you can find a way to finagle them in there, 4 at the extreme. But I believe you're looking at 2 to 3.
Yeah, it's I would say this, in NASCAR, I'm definitely more of a cash game player than I am GPP. Especially on the, you can find those contests on FanDuel where you can really, kind of increase your bankroll, in terms of those multipliers, so I definitely have found myself more as a cash gamer than GPP. But of course, we're here to break it down. You mentioned about how many dominators that we do need. And I know that, you wrote about this over at Awesemo.com this week. You just mentioned there about the 3 dominators. So that is something that, you have to take into. In GPP, could you only have 2 dominators and somehow, come in and cash?
Yeah, you very well could. I mean, in this race last year, because of the package, it was a single dominator build in the spring and the fall race. Both the guys that led the most laps led over or at near 450 of the 500 laps. They were just impossible to get around. Like the dirty air coming off of these guys, it was impossible to maneuver around. So last year's races were just single dominator builds for a 500 lap race, which it seemed preposterous. Mm-hmm. But I think there is scenario where you could look at just going with 2 and then building with value around those guys so that you don't have to double punt.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of those dominators as we do go on. Of course, we do break these down in the tiers, 4 different tiers. Tiers 1, it will be the 11K and 10K drivers on DraftKings, and then 9 and 8 will be tier 2, and so on and so forth. And can't wait to get Phil's thought process on the ownership that we're seeing on Joey Gase and Quinn Hoff later on in the show. I have imagined that's going to be an interesting conversation to have there. But, let's get right into tier number 1. So these are the drivers who are in the 11K and 10K range on DraftKings. So we have Martin Truex Jr., who's starting second. He's 11,800 on DK. Over on FanDuel, he's 13,500. Brad Keselowski on the pole. He's 11,400 on DK, 13,000 on FanDuel. Then we got Kevin Harvick starting 6th at 11,000 on DK, 12,700 on FanDuel. Ryan Blaney, who you talked a lot about last week, he's starting 10th. He's at 10,700 on DK, 11,600 on FanDuel. Chase Elliott starting 8th, 10,400 on DK, 12,300 on FanDuel. And then Denny Hamlin, who you mentioned a little bit there a second ago, he's 10,200 on DK, 13,200 on FanDuel. I guess we got to start off with Martin Truex Jr., the most expensive driver on DK for this week at 11,800, getting close to 60% ownership in our projections right now on DraftKings. I guess first off, your thoughts on just that ownership projection that we're seeing right now.
I really do not know what to make of that, because it's just to peel the lid off of this. We've got Truex at, like you said, nearly 60% ownership on DraftKings tomorrow. Brad Keselowski coming in under 30%. So it looks like in the either or toss up that people aren't making this a decision of, okay, I'm going to just stack the front row and go on from there. That the majority of people are saying, okay, I'm either going to go Truex or I'm going to go Brad. And the people are looking at the guy that's won this race for the last 2 times, the June event and then this race last year. So, I mean, we always talk about ownership. That's probably your biggest decision is what you're gonna do with the front row. So let's talk about these merits. Like, if you're gonna just make the decision of, I'm gonna play one of these 2. So like we said, Martin, your most expensive guy, back-to-back winner in this race. Do we see him basically repeating what he's done? And for me, the answer is no. In the June race, he did not have the best car. I mean, he had a great setup, and eventually he got to the front. But then for those final 130 laps or so that he led, he just took advantage of clean air. And it worked out that there was really only one caution during that time that he led. So, he didn't have to worry about the pack getting jumbled back up together and then him having to fight off somebody. Basically here at Martinsville, you will see that people that lead laps, they lead them in chunks. So Martin was able to take advantage of that. And, once he got to the front, it just wasn't a factor. The main thing for me, and of course, if you look at Truex's short-term history here since 2017, his worst finish is 16th. He's got 2 wins. He's got a couple of other top 5 finishes, but it's more about this package this year. And that's what the deciding factor is for me. Yes, he's won at Martinsville, but when you look at the combinations of Auto Club Speedway, New Hampshire, and Richmond, head-to-head versus Keselowski has hands down been the better driver. You average out those 4 races that I just talked about. Truex has an average finish of 10th compared to Keselowski's 4th. Yes, Truex has that win at Martinsville, but Keselowski has 2 wins. But here's the major thing. Those average laps led, 35.8 in those 4 races for Truex, 115.8 for Keselowski. Keselowski has continually kept finding his way to the front, sitting on the lead and defending that lead in these races. Like whatever it is that him and his crew chief are scheming up setup wise, it has continued to work. And I foresee that continuing this week. And, teams are a little bit behind the 8 ball because of just how long it took them to finish this race. So, what the crew chiefs have decided to do in their short term, getting back to the shops and then heading back to Virginia for this race, it's going to matter so much. And race notes from a hot night race in June versus a day race in late, it's going to be the very first of November. I don't think those race notes are going to matter all of that much. So I think this is going to be more a question of what have these drivers been doing in this package this year versus the Martinsville races as a conglomerate. And when it's that deciding factor, I'm looking at Keselowski way much more than I am Truex.
I mean, I know we got a question. I think we'll kind of get more into this later on the show, but in terms of, between Martin and Brad, would you say that, if you're saying, give me the top 2 favorites to win this race, that they would be your 1-2?
Actually, I think that if you're just talking about straight favorites for this race, it's going to be Keselowski. And then I'm probably looking at his Penske teammate, Joey Logano, who has been just as equally good here, but he doesn't have the starting position that Keselowski has this week.
Yeah, we'll talk about Joey Logano because I know there was a question in chat about him, but I do want to let you know about a promo we got going on over at Awesemo.com, as today is the last day to take advantage of this deal. Use a promo code PUMPKIN to get an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for only $10.31. That's nearly $20 off the original price. The package does include full access to all of our Awesemo Plus features, including player projections, ownership projections, our premium Slack channel, lineup builder, and much more. This offer is valid through today, Halloween. And of course, on that premium Slack channel, myself and Phil will be in there. Phil will be there on the NASCAR side. I'll be there today on the MMA side of things, talking to you as the fights go on, of course. Coming up after us at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, it'll be On the Contrary. They'll get you ready for tomorrow's NFL action. And then at 2:30, myself and Pete Rogers Jr. will be on for MMA Live Before Lock. So keep it here all day long here at Awesemo.com and all weekend long. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. Also, if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Gonna let you know about a giveaway that we got going on when you do subscribe to Awesemo here on YouTube. Now, looking at the rest of the Tier 1 here, so we got Redick, Blaney, Chase Elliott, and Denny Hamlin. Which one of these guys piques your interest the most out of those 4?
It's weird, but I'm really not giving any credence to Harvick. He's priced up at 11K. If you look at his recent history here at at Martinsville, all the different variations of the packages that they've run. He somehow led 0 laps. It's crazy that him and Childers haven't figured out how to get him to the front, or just whatever strategy. But his best finish is a couple of 5th place finishes. But I mean, it looks like if you play Harvick at 12.7 on FanDuel or 11K on DraftKings, that you are paying premium for a guy that's probably going to get you a 5th to a 10th place finish with maybe some fastest laps in there, and probably not any laps led. And I mean, that's definitely a place that I'm not looking to go. The interesting guy once again is Ryan Blaney. Mm-hmm. Blaney starts 10th, so he's a little bit further back. But the interesting thing with Blaney is that in whatever variation of this package that they've been running the last couple of years, he's been really good. He finds his way to the front. If you wanted to use that weird June race as a corollary, mm-hmm. He and Brad both found their way a lap down because of just some weird shenanigans going on early in that race, but they fought their way back, and they both led later on into the second and the third segment. His finishes 2nd, 5th, 4th. He got a 20th in there, and then 3rd, 8th, and then a 25th back in the spring race of 2017. So I mean, you are looking probably at a guy with a top 5 finish. Now he is obviously priced up this week, but he's a guy that you have to give credence to as a dominator. Go back here to the ownership. A guy, I'm not gonna spill the beans on this, but the number that surprised me is what Hamlin is sitting at right now. And as part of the Joe Gibbs, I mean, Joe Gibbs drivers at short tracks, they generally do pretty well. And I think that you probably do want some exposure to Hamlin, especially as, I talked about before, he's in a position where he can't really rest on his laurels, especially if one of these outlier guys were to go on and win the race. But in this short track package, the guy that has 7 wins this season, these 4 races, Hamlin only has 1 top 10 finish. So it's weird that him and Harvick have both kind of struggled to get this 750 horsepower package at the 1 mile to half mile, mm-hmm. flatter venues under their belt.
Yeah, it's as I look at this top tier, I guess I look at Blaney a little bit, just point differential too, starting at 10th. He's the lowest starter in terms of these 3. So that one, does kind of stick out to me. And of course, if you do want to see exactly what our ownership projections, all you got to do right there, you see it on the left-hand side of the screen, hit that promo code pumpkin at awesemo.com/join to get a Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $10.31. Also, I didn't mention about when you're in that premium cycle, also gets you, Phil puts the race sheets in there so you can take advantage and get all Phil's information right there. Of course, if you do have any questions, line those up right now here over on YouTube or on Slack. Phil, let's move on to tier number 2. This tier, not as many drivers as we typically see in this tier, but we got Joey Logano starting 7th, Kyle Busch starting 9th, Jimmy Johnson 27th. Definitely want to get into him there. Eric Jones starting 19th, Alex Bowman starting 3rd. We can talk about the pricing on him in relation to the 2 sites. Kurt Busch starting 5th, Clint Boyer starting 16th, and Eric Almirola is starting 20th. Let's talk a little bit about Joey Logano, because Wyatt asked this question. He goes, how do you see Joey Logano doing tomorrow? He's already locked in. However, he was really fast in June. Do you see him going for the win?
It's illegal for these drivers to try to benefit their teammates. Like Logano could be in the lead and then just kind of mysteriously get his foot off the gas and then allow Brad to pass him. I mean, NASCAR has these rules, and if they even suspect that you're trying to finagle things in order to benefit a teammate, they will call you to the carpet. They will dock you points, and they'll remove you from the championship. So that being said, I had my concerns about just what the focus of the 22 team Logano was going to be last week, because they've got their spot locked in. I mean, Logano was competitive all last week, and I don't see a reason why he wouldn't be this week. I talked about, Logano is probably my second favorite besides Brad. Look at Logano, these 4 races in this package. He's the only driver that can boast a top 5 finish in each of these races. Behind Brad, he's averaging the second most laps led at 84.8. He has just been phenomenal in this package this year. You look at what he's done at this venue over the last 7 races. He's got a 19th and a 24th. Everything else is practically a top 5 finish. Mm-hmm. He's got the win back in the fall race of 2018. And unlike Brad and Truex, who have a race with over 450 laps led that is just significantly skewing their averages, Logano doesn't have one of those races in his back pocket, but he's still averaging the 3rd most laps led over the last 7 races with 86.9. So I mean, it's a combination of good track history, running really well in this package, and plus for Logano, he's got nothing left to lose. I mean, if he wants to go all out trying to get this victory, it's not going to affect him going into Phoenix. So I really like Joey this weekend.
One of the questions I always get on MMA shows that I do here is they'll say, cash core. Who's kind of those core that you're putting in your cash lines? Would you say Joey Logano is a cash core for you this week?
Yeah, you can build DraftKings don't strike me dead for giving away too much of a lineup here. But I mean, you can go the front row, you can go Jimmy Johnson, and then you can add in some lower tier place differential guys. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you're probably going to have to punt once, but I mean, it all makes it work together. But I sure like it a whole lot better, instead of paying 11.8 for Truex, who I really don't feel that strong about, mm-hmm. saving nearly $2,000 by playing Logano instead. And that way I'm not having to debate the merits of Quinn Houff versus Garrett Smithley versus Joey Gase versus JJ Yaley for my final spot in cash on DraftKings.
Hey, your favorite drivers. You love rostering those guys.
I've got a die cast of Quinn Houff. What am I talking about?
Jimmy Johnson, you mentioned him there a second ago. He's starting 27th, 9,300 on DK, 9,700 on FanDuel. We got this question in relation to him. It goes, do you think that Jimmy Johnson can make his way all the way through the field and compete for a top 10? Seems like bad luck has always been finding him a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if we're talking about if I didn't have any bad luck, I would not have any luck whatsoever. That has been Jimmy Johnson's story of late. His finishes have gone 36th at Texas, 31st at Kansas, and then a 13th at the Roval, but then a 29th at Talladega. So I mean, 3 out of the last 4 races, it has just not been good. But Jimmy, he's got place differential. That's the main thing. I mean, in this area, you're trying to debate the merits of a 2nd, 3rd, or 4th dominator, and you've got these guys in this area. I mean, Jimmy's he's the easy play because of that place differential. And you look at what he's done here at Martinsville. This is a track he's won at multiple times. Over the last 3 years, he hasn't won here, but I mean, he's basically been a 10th to a 12th place driver. His average running position has been 14th. So if we're just going to say that things standardized this weekend for Jimmy, then he's going to probably pick you up 14 to 15 spots, and paying that at both of those salaries on FanDuel and DraftKings. I mean, that works in cash. I think Jimmy is just the easy play in cash this week.
Yeah, when I was putting together our sheet for the show last night, right when I looked at him, as starting 27th, I was like, man, that's got to be a guy you look at. I mean, because when you look at in this tier, he's the driver that's the farthest back. The next closest would be Eric Almirola at 20th, Eric Jones at 19th. If you're comparing those three, would Jimmy Johnson be your number one target in terms of if you say, hey, you got to roster one of these three, is Jimmy Johnson number one?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, there's even the debate to be had in tournaments when you're in this area about, okay, Jimmy's got the place differential, which gives him the safest floor. Because of that place differential plus a finishing position, does he outscore these guys like Logano, like Kyle Busch, like Eric Jones? And Eric Jones, I'm not that high on this week. So I mean, it's really more a discussion about Logano and Kyle. And can Jimmy, with his place differential in his finishing position, outscore Logano and Kyle, who are so far up that they need dominator points in this case to outscore Jimmy?
Another question. This is more of a general question about this race. Says Phil, do you see this being a fairly green race, or do you suspect we'll see a lot of cautions? I know that's hard to project, but curious what you think.
It's supposed to be 60-ish. I think maybe overcast tomorrow, so there should be a fair amount of grip. I think that it's you're probably looking somewhere in the neighborhood of, with the stage breaks, somewhere like 7 to 8 cautions. So it's not going to be like overly aggressive, but I mean, crap, every time that I've thought we were going to see a green race, these guys lose their absolute minds early in the event. If you watched the truck race last night, it was a wreck fest. I mean, these guys were spinning out each other every time they went into a corner. I believe that 88 of the 200 laps were finished under caution. So I mean, they barely got half a race under green flag conditions. And that's one of the other tough things about this track, is that if you have a caution, it's going to take probably 5 to 6 laps to get whatever is on the track off the track, reset the field, and then you've got to add another lap onto there for the field to set itself out when they come to the choose cone, as we call it. Mm-hmm. So you could be looking at a scenario where there are a bunch of yellow flag laps, and if that's the case, then that definitely leads credence to just going with 2 dominators.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned a little bit about Alex Bowman starting third, 8,700 on DK, but 10-3 over on FanDuel. Do you prefer him on one side over the other?
Yeah, starting third, Bowman is a definite hard sell for me this weekend. Like, I could make the case at Kansas, I can make the case at Texas, but this is the sort of track that really doesn't suit him. It plays in his favor that Hendrick has continued to show up here at Martinsville with significant speed. Like, it's been Hendrick, and it's been Penske at this track generally that has shown the most speed. So hopefully that translates into his production. But if you look at his career, he's been definitely much more of an intermediate track driver than he has been at these short venues. And he's got a couple of top 10 finishes, but starting third, there's just so much more room for him to lose than to gain. And I don't really see him as a legitimate threat either to lead laps, unless there's something really screwy that they do with pit strategy in order to try to get Bowman a win. Like, if you're doing 150 max, then yes, I would consider having some Bowman. But if you're just doing simple 20 max, then he's probably out of your pool.
I think the only driver in this tier we haven't talked about will be Clint Boyer, who's starting 16th, 8,300 on DK, and 10,000 over on FanDuel.
Boyer is an interesting discussion. Kind of similar temperature circumstances back in 2018. He ended up winning this race. Him and Blaney were the top 2 lap leaders that day. It was a really weird, interesting day for, like, if you were pivoting off of everything that was highly owned, then you were in the money that day. Boyer starts 16th. He gets you place differential. He's got good track history here. I don't think that he's cash viable. Like if you're in that area and you need a cash play, I would go down to Eric Almirola, who's been just as good here, but has a little more place differential to gain you.
Yeah, it's but I think I feel like Jimmy Johnson's going to be a core play for a lot of people, particularly in cash. Look at ownership. I mean, I think there's some value there in terms of GPP. So as I mentioned, if you want to get access to our ownership, you got to sign up for that Awesemo Plus weekly pass. Right now, we got a deal going on. When you use the promo code Pumpkin, $10.31. All you got to do is use that promo code Pumpkin. Now let's move on to tier number 3, and I think it seems like about every week the guy that is at the top of this tier every week is Tyler Redick, and once again he's at the top of this tier at 7,900 on DK, 8,300 over on FanDuel. He starts 17th. You mentioned about I know you wrote about Matty D starting 12th, 7,000 on DraftKings, 9,000 on FanDuel. So I guess let's start off with Matty D and kind of why you like him here.
Yeah, and Matt is definitely a just like a DraftKings play this week. At 9,000, he's overpriced for FanDuel, but at 7K, basically what you need this week besides your dominators is you need guys that are going to get you a top 10 finish. You need them to stay on the lead lap. Because if they get caught a lap down, then it just increases the likelihood that they're going to get lapped again, and they just continue to tumble down the grid. But starting 12th, Matt should be relatively safe. I mean, you look at everybody in this in this tier, except for William Byron. Well, actually, yeah. He's got the best average finish in these 4 corollary races than everybody else in this tier and below. He's got an average finish of 11th. He's got 2 top 10 finishes, 3 top 15 finishes. So like I'm not overly excited about Matt. Like he could very well finish where he starts, but it's just the prospect that you're getting him as good as he's been on short tracks, starting where he's at, the Penske corollary. He's a guy that I really like in tournaments as a finishing position play.
Of course, this is a NASCAR DFS strategy show right here at Awesemo.com. Of course, coming up after us at 1:30 will be On the Contrary. They'll get you ready for tomorrow's NFL action. It's a rare Sunday off for me as the Bucks play on Monday night, so I get to kind of sit back and enjoy a nice Sunday off. Of course, we got the race here as well. Of course, if you ever do miss this show live, it is a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. All you got to do is go to Awesemo.com and go onto the Awesemo Podcast Network and get the links to where you can listen to the show on demand, or maybe you watch us live but then you want to kind of go back. You can if you just want to get the audio version of the show, it is there on the Awesemo Podcast Network. William Byron starting 13th, 7,700, 9,800 on FanDuel. Matt Kenseth starting 31st, 7,500 on DK, 6,800 on there. Let's in terms of Matt Kenseth. And obviously, there's some point differential potentially there. Is potentially not the best word to say.
Yeah, and God, it wasn't 2 laps after we finally started racing again Wednesday that Matt got turned by Denny Hamlin and went straight into not William Byron, but Bubba Wallace. Which, I mean, as soon as that happened, my day was over, and I was just watching the race for kicks and giggles. But Matt is he's in an odd position. Like he's racing at the end of what should be the end of his career, like Jimmy Johnson, and he's closing it out as about as horrible as he could. Let me find Matt. Yeah, his last 3 finishes have gone 39th, 40th, and 34th. I mean, this is not the going out party that Matt Kenseth has wanted, but we're returning to Martinsville, a track that he has done pretty well at. Like if you look at the super sheet, and look at Matt Kenseth's last few finishes here at Martinsville, they're not that impressive. You've got 23rd in the June race. You go back a couple years ago when he was filling in for Trevor Bayne, he finished 23rd. But if you go beyond that, when he was still a full-time driver for JGR, let me find Matt here. Yeah, you had a couple of top 10 finishes. So this is a question of how good is Matt still, and can he pick up place differential? I think that even though he's priced up, he's 7,500 on DraftKings, but I think that like if you're in this range, and the same thing goes for Bubba, if you're in this range because you're not stacking the front row plus Jimmy Johnson, so you've got the money to spend. I like Matt in cash. I like Bubba in cash. If you're making a decision between the two, I'm probably going to err with Bubba over those guys. And then on the flip side, Byron is your tournament pivot off of either of these guys. Last two races here, Byron's finishes have gone 8th and 2nd. You've got the Hendrick correlation with the speed. Byron's been running, pretty well here to close out the season. He nearly won this race last year in the fall. So Byron is kind of in that same situation for me that Matty D is, even though he's priced up a bit more, that he's a guy that should be able to hold on to the lead lap, hang around that 10th to 15th position for the night, and then maybe towards the end of the race that he'll find his way into the top 10.
Why ask the question? Can you trust Kenseth?
Well, every time
I think that's the answer.
Yeah, and God, that I hate to say, but the pause of me having to think, can I trust a guy driving the 42? I mean, this should not be a debate. This should not be a debate about Kenseth and his skill and this good of a car. But God, the last 3 weeks, it has gone horrible, and you start to question these decisions. That's why I hate to say it, but I think that's why I say if it's 1v1 between him and Bubba, you're going with Bubba.
Yeah. And actually, it was funny because someone actually asked that question of whether you would go Bubba versus Kenseth. Looking at some, and of course, Bubba starts 32nd, 7,200 on DK, 7,000 on FanDuel. Looking at some other drivers in this one, we got Austin Dillon starting 14th, 7,300, 8,000. Cole Custer starting 15th, 6,900 on DK, 7,200 on FanDuel. Christopher Bell starting 11th. He's 6,800 on DK, 7,300 on FanDuel. Chris Buescher starting 28th, 6,700 on DK, 6,600 on FanDuel. Ryan Newman's 21st. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 18th. Michael McDowell 24th. In terms of the rest of this tier, is there one driver that kind of would you say intrigues you more than others?
Yeah, it's Chris Buescher. Out of all of these guys, once you get into this 6K range on DraftKings, Buescher has the most place differential to gain. And you look at his history here, and this was back when he was racing for JTG Doherty. Average finish of 16th over the past 7 races, a bunch of 11th, 12th, 13th place finishes. And this goes back to the time that he spent with AJ Allmendinger. Dinger was always a driver that you would consider playing in the road races as a possible dominator, but sneakily, Martinsville was one of his best tracks. Like that was always the cheap play. Whenever we came to this place, was just play Dinger because he was always going to end up picking 20 plus place differential spots and getting a top 10 finish. And we always see that whatever tracks Dinger did really well at, it transferred over to Buescher. Like he was actively sharing setup and race notes with Buescher and improving him along the way. So we see this here at Martinsville. Buescher became a pretty good driver considering the equipment that he's in. So we've got better equipment. The last race that we were here, we saw the finish carry over with a 13th place finish. I think out of all of these guys, like Buescher is the guy in this area on DraftKings that I would make a priority to get into my lineup.
Yeah. Wyatt says, he goes, I like Chris Buescher, but how do you like Ryan Newman? So Ryan Newman starting 21st, 6,500 on DK, 7,600 on FanDuel.
Newman's cash viable. Like in a 1v1, you should definitely be going with Buescher. But like if you've already got Buescher in a lineup and you've got 6,500 left over and you're debating the merits of Newman versus Stenhouse versus McDowell versus Dillon, I think I'm going to side with Newman. He's got good track history here. He's the kind of driver that you want, that is going to make that car as as wide as the track itself and block. You know, he should be able to keep people behind him. The thing that it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth is if you look at the 4 corollary races here. And of course, we only have 3 with Newman because he missed the Phoenix race, but his average finish is 19th. So if we're going to average things out, the Newman's only getting you a couple of spots. So if you play Newman, then you're hoping that this is more a play on he knows this track really well and he can get himself another top 15 finish.
Question we got about Bubba Wallace, and this is more about heading into next year with obviously the change with him going over to the Jordan Hamlin team. James says, he goes, will Mike Wallace make a difference for Bubba next season?
If it doesn't, I will be shocked. Mm-hmm. Like, we have seen drivers leave this 43 team for greener pastures and do much better. And, you know, quite frankly, RPM has been running on a shoestring budget the last couple of years. I mean, they basically had to move into Richard Childress Racing shop in order to take advantage of this alliance that they have. Like, whatever money's being invested by this guy that has the majority ownership in RPM, it's not getting funneled down to the team per se in R&D. So the 43 has had to really heavily lean upon Childress to make this a functioning team. And of course, when you're in a circumstance like that, it's going to affect your driver and their performance. So, you know, Jordan is talking about, like, this is going to be a competitive team that is going to compete for a championship. Now, what that looks like as an alliance of Joe Gibbs, the last couple of alliances that we've seen, the 95 hasn't been that great, but Truex in the 78 won a championship for Furniture Row as a Joe Gibbs alliance. So if we're getting Furniture Row type of alliance and investment from Jordan and Hamlin, then, I mean, Bubba, I don't want to set the bar too high for Bubba in his first year, but I will say that if he doesn't make the playoffs next year, it's probably going to be a big disappointment.
Yeah, and by the way, I should say Mike Wheeler, not Mike Wallace. We got a question about, are you playing any, as the commenter says, Ricky Spinhouse?
No, like in this area, I mean, I can go up to Buescher, or I can go up to Newman per se, or I can go down to McDowell and Dillon or John Hunter or Priest, or just keep on going. I mean, Stenhouse is in an area where I find guys that I like above him and below him that are safer plays because of place differential.
This is a NASCAR DFS strategy show right here on Awesemo.com. Do want to let you know about a giveaway that we currently have going on. So we have a special YouTube subscriber giveaway running right now. And all you have to do is like the pinned tweet on our Twitter account, which is @Awesemo_com, and subscribe to this channel. That's it. No guessing or anything. One random person who does both will be selected to win a free month of Awesemo Plus. It's that easy. So hit that subscribe button now and like the pinned tweet for your chance to win. Also, of course, every day at Awesemo.com, we have free premium content. And today, the NFL Express Stack Tool and MMA rankings are the free premium content over at Awesemo.com. So check that out. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. That does help us out a lot. Now let's look at tier number 4. And before we actually kind of get it, I guess we can kind of get into the drivers here, but there was a question of who do we like that's 6,100 and below? Who would be your 2 favorite drivers? So basically, you're Michael McDowell and then everyone in tier 4. So we got Ty Dillon, John Hunter Nemechek, Ryan Preece, Corey LaJoie, who I know you wrote about this week, Daniel Suarez, Garrett Smythe, J.J. Yeley, Brennan Poole, Joey Davidson, Joey Gase, Quinn Hoff, Timmy Hill, and Josh Bilecki. I
think, like, if you're just looking for floor, it's probably Corey LaJoie at 55. But if you're looking for a little bit of a ceiling, then it's probably Ryan Preece starting 22nd at 5,600. And I think that'll probably be the easiest pivot, is just going from LaJoie to Preece in tournaments.
And I will tell you, not going to give away their exact ownership, but when it comes to punt plays, it is definitely Joey Gase and Quinn Hoff that are becoming punt plays for people. Thoughts on them being punt plays?
I get it. Gase starts dead last. He has nowhere else to go. Um, instead of looking at the Martinsville numbers as a whole, probably with these punt plays, it's better to look at what they've done at the 4 corollary races. And interesting enough, Gase and Houff both have the exact same average finish of 33rd. But if you go up a little bit, you'll find J.J. Yaley, even though he's 300, 400 more, depending on which driver you're looking at, who starts 38th, but he's got an average finish of 30th. You've got Brennan Poole, who, because he starts 30th, there's a bit more risk there, but he's got an average finish of 30th. So ownership says that Gase and Houff are going to be the chalk plays in this area, but I think I would, if you can find the salary, I would rather get up to JJ Yaley.
Mm-hmm. But I know you wrote a little bit this week about Corey LaJoie in terms of point differential.
Yeah, LaJoie is just kind of like he's the safest guy in this tier. He's gonna pick up some place differential. Like if you look at the 4 corollary races, his average finish is 27th over those 4 races, so it's nothing fantastic. But you look at his numbers here at Martinsville, 2 straight 18th place finishes. So hopefully there's more there when it comes to Martinsville as far as his short track abilities are versus these other places. And I think there might be something to that. So like if you're playing cash and you're down in this area, the safest bet is to go with Corey LaJoie. But quite frankly, if you don't trust LaJoie, then I don't have a problem getting 3 extra place differential spots for $100 less with Daniel Suarez.
In terms of the rest of the drivers in this tier, is there somebody that we should be talking about that we haven't?
Really, as far as the punt plays, the sad truth of it is, with what we're having to do with dominators, you're going to have to play at least one punt. Like unless you find some weird lineup construction on DraftKings that I just haven't played around with yet, you're going to have at least one punt. And especially if you're stacking a lot of these first tier guys, you're probably going to have to double punt, especially if you want to get away from Corey LaJoie. So, like I say, these punt plays are never guys that you just want to focus a heavy swath of your ownership in, especially in 20 max or 150 max. So, in this area, you've got to mix and match, because we don't know which one of these guys is going to be the lucky one that continues to get a lap back or benefits from the lucky dog whenever it comes out, and just kind of steadily picks up positions throughout the night and ends up outscoring the rest of these guys.
Of course, we'll get into some listener questions here. So if you do have any questions, you can line those up right now, whether that's on our premium Slack channel, the NASCAR channel, or whether it's here on YouTube. So be sure to hit up those questions right now there in the premium Slack channel. Of course, we talked a lot about this race here over on over Slack. Hoodmaster chiming in. He says, I don't think I heard you talk about Kyle Busch earlier. Thoughts on him after winning a few days ago? Also, rank Logano, Kyle, JJ for DK GPP, and then rank them DK Cash. So I guess first off, we'll talk about Kyle Busch.
Okay, Kyle is really interesting. The discussion that we generally have with Kyle is, because there's no practice, he needs laps to get information and make his car better and make himself better throughout the races. They make adjustments. Well, I mean, there aren't going to be any more laps. The 500 laps is going to give him plenty of time to talk to his crew chief and tell him, hey, this is what we need to do throughout the race. And they've already got the benefit of how this track raced and looked like back in June. So I mean, there should be plenty of information for Kyle as he starts this race to make him competitive. Plus, the monkey's off his back. He got that win last week. We have to wonder, since he got that pressure off of him to extend his win streak, is that just going to be like the floodgates opening up and he's going to, just race with abandon and continue to be a good driver to close out this season. You look at his numbers before the June race, which of course didn't run good because he didn't have the benefit of practice, and plus he was part of that early race shenanigans that was going on that put him a lap down. He never got back from that problem. But you look before that, third, fourth, second, first, second. He is averaging the fourth most laps led out of everybody over the last seven races. He has been exceptionally good here. So Kyle is a bet on track history and maybe a little bit of narrative showing these guys that if he wouldn't have been so bad during the second round of the playoffs, then he'd have his spot locked up in the championship and he'd be competing for a championship with these guys. As far as ranking them for tournaments, I'm probably looking at Logano, Kyle Busch, Jimmy Johnson, but in cash, I think let's just say that you've picked somebody from the front row, and then you're trying to get your second driver in. I'm still going to go with Logano because I believe he's going to lead probably somewhere around 100 to 150 laps tomorrow, and then Jimmy, and then Kyle. But then again, I don't know why you don't just play somebody from the front row with Logano with Jimmy Johnson.
Next up, asking for your feelings on Christopher Bell, starting 11th, 6,800 on DK, 7,300 on FanDuel.
Oh, in the June race, he started 20th. Actually, no, he started. Yeah, Christopher Bell ended up being bad chalk. He started 32nd, and he finished 28th. You look at what he's done in this package, it looks a little bit better, but the only race that he's really run well at was New Hampshire, and that was a track that we were expecting because of just how dominant he was in the Xfinity series. I don't want to trust Christopher Bell here. Remember, in the Xfinity series, they do not race at Martinsville. In fact, the race that's going to happen this afternoon, this is the first time that the Xfinity series will have raced at Martinsville since 2007. So this is just a place that they do not come to. So for these rookie Cup drivers, it's a whole new learning experience, and I'm going to bet that the learning curve is still going to be there for a guy like Bell.
Next up says, so you think playing 3 dominators and playing 2 drivers 5,500 and below could potentially be optimal?
Yeah, it very well could be, but once again, the punt plays that you're playing with, you need them to get positive place differential, and you probably don't need like 10 spots out of them, but there's a reason why their ownership is so high, and Gase and Half are the two of the cheaper guys that you can possibly bank on to get you 5 to 7 spots.
And of course, we appreciate everyone who tunes in here every Saturday for the NASCAR DFS Strategy Show. Of course, as I mentioned, if you ever mention the show, of course, you can watch it on demand right here on YouTube. Also, it is available part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. So that is going to do it for this edition of the NASCAR DFS Strategy Show. Of course, me and Phil will be back next week to get you ready for the NASCAR race.